I have never met her before in my life.
I know you're my dad.
The little girl stepped in front of two security guards, pointed at the man they were dragging toward the ballroom doors, and screamed, "That's my daddy!" The music died so fast, the chandeliers seemed to hum. And the man she was pointing at, a tired single dad in a wrinkled delivery jacket, with rain still dripping from his sleeves, stared at her like the floor had vanished beneath him. If stories like this hit you right in the chest, subscribe, like the video, and stay with me until the end. Because this one doesn't just break hearts, it changes them. Noah Reed had walked into the Hart Grand Hotel carrying a garment bag and a box of emergency tuxedo shirts. That was it. A last-minute delivery for a luxury event manager who was already yelling at someone through a headset. A quick signature, a little extra money before midnight, and then home to his 8-year-old son, Ben, who was sleeping on a mattress on the floor of Noah's tiny apartment because the bed frame had snapped 2 weeks ago, and Noah still hadn't had time to fix it. He was supposed to be invisible. Men like Noah usually were. But now, every camera in the ballroom had turned toward him. At the center of the room, beneath towers of white roses and gold lights, stood Evelyn Hart, the billionaire everyone in the city knew, the woman on magazine covers, the owner of half the skyline, the woman Noah had once loved so fiercely he had mistaken it for oxygen. Her face had gone completely white. Beside her stood Damian Cross, her perfect fiancé, with the politician's smile and the eyes of a man who never smiled unless someone was losing. And clutching the front of her glittering little dress with both fists was a 7-year-old girl with Evelyn's eyes and Noah's mouth. "That's him," she cried again, tears spilling fast now. "That's my daddy! Don't let them take him!" Noah couldn't move. He had never seen this child before in his life. One of the guards tightened his grip on Noah's arm. "Sir, you need to leave." But the girl ran straight across the polished floor and threw herself around his waist like she had been looking for him forever. The ballroom exploded. People started whispering. Phones lifted higher. Someone laughed the cruel, disbelieving laugh rich people use when they think scandal belongs to other families. Noah looked down at the little girl clinging to him, and something cracked open inside his ribs. "Sweetheart," he said, voice rough with confusion, "I think you've got the wrong guy." She pulled back just enough to look up at him, shaking her head violently. No, I don't. I know your face. I know your name. You're Noah." The sound of his own name from her mouth hit him harder than the scream had. Across the room, Evelyn finally found her voice. "Sophie," she said sharply. The girl flinched, not because it was loud, because it was cold. Noah looked at Evelyn, really looked at her, and 10 years of buried wreckage came rushing back at once. Summer storms, cheap coffee, her hands ink-stained from sketching buildings on napkins, promises whispered in parked cars, a train station, a goodbye that had never made sense. And now this. Damien stepped forward like he owned even the air around them. "This man needs to be removed, immediately." Sophie spun toward him with pure hatred in her small face. "You're lying again." A ripple moved through the crowd. Again. Noah caught that one word and felt his pulse change. Evelyn descended the stage one measured step at a time. She looked perfect from a distance. Up close, Noah saw the truth. Her hands were trembling. Her breathing was too fast. Her eyes, those impossible gray-blue eyes, were locked on him with shock, fear, and something that looked dangerously close to grief. "Sophie," Evelyn said, kneeling now, forcing gentleness into her tone. "Come here." "No." "Sophie." "No!" the girl shouted, backing into Noah as if he were shelter. "He didn't leave us. You lied." The room went still. Evelyn's face shattered for half a second. Damien recovered first. "Someone turn those cameras off." Too late. The story was already alive. Noah's mind was racing so fast it hurt. He looked at Evelyn. "What is she talking about?" Evelyn didn't answer him. That hurt more than it should have. Instead, she stood, straightened her shoulders, and became the woman the world knew again. "My daughter is upset. She recently found old family photos and has drawn a childish conclusion. Mr. Reed was leaving anyway." Mr. Reed, not Noah. Noah felt the humiliation arrive in heat. Of course. Of course this was how it would go. The billionaire protecting the room. The poor man becoming the mistake. Sophie turned on her mother with tears running freely now. "You said my daddy died." Noah's heartbeat stumbled. Died. Evelyn closed her eyes just once. And in that tiny second, Noah understood the worst part. This girl believed him. Whoever had filled her head with his face had given her hope first, then buried her in it. The guard began pulling him again. Sophie screamed so hard her voice broke. Noah reacted before thought. He crouched and gently took her shoulders. Hey, listen to me. I'm not going anywhere right now, okay? Breathe." She tried, failed, tried again. The whole ballroom watched the little rich girl calm down only when the poor stranger spoke to her like she mattered. That made people uncomfortable. Good. When Noah stood, Damien was staring at him with open contempt now. "You've made your little scene. Name your price." Noah turned so slowly, the man actually blinked. "What?" Damien smiled. "That's what this is, isn't it? A setup. A pathetic one, but almost clever. Someone feeds a child a story, points her at a face from the past, and suddenly you're family." Noah took one step forward. He had spent years learning to swallow anger because anger didn't pay rent. Anger didn't pack lunches. Anger didn't sit beside Ben's bed during fever nights. But some men had a talent for reaching into your chest and squeezing the oldest wound they could find. "I don't know what game you think I'm playing," Noah said quietly. "But if you ever talk about that little girl like she's a prop again, I'll forget we're in a ballroom." The silence after that was sharp enough to cut. Damien's smile vanished. Evelyn looked between them, and for the first time that night, fear on her face wasn't for herself. It was for Noah. That terrified him more than Damien ever could. Then Sophie did something small, desperate, and devastating. She slipped her hand into Noah's. The cameras caught it. By morning, it would be everywhere. A child who looked like money, holding the hand of a man who looked like he'd lost most fights life could offer. Evelyn saw it too, and something in her broke. "Everyone out," she said. Her voice was not loud, but power doesn't need volume. The guests hesitated, then obeyed. Security cleared the room. Staff fled like smoke. Within minutes, the grand ballroom was reduced to 6 people beneath the chandelier. Noah, Evelyn, Sophie, Damien, and 2 guards pretending not to listen. Sophie still wouldn't let go. Noah looked at Evelyn. "Start talking." Damien answered for her. "No." Sophie shouted. "He's scared!" Damien snapped. Enough! Sophie flinched so hard Noah's blood went cold. Noah had seen that flinch before. In mirrors. Ben did it sometimes too when voices got too sharp. Evelyn noticed Noah noticing, and whatever calculation she had been making inside herself collapsed. Damien, she said, not looking at him. Leave. He laughed once. You're joking. Leave. This affects our engagement, the company, the board. Evelyn finally turned to him. I said leave. It was the first honest thing she had said all night. Damien's expression darkened with something ugly and private. Then he adjusted his cuff, leaned close to her, and whispered something Noah couldn't hear. But he saw its effect. Evelyn's face went rigid. Damien walked away smiling. One of the guards followed him. The other stayed by the door. Sophie tugged Noah's hand and whispered, I knew you'd come. The words went through him like a blade. I didn't know, Noah said, voice barely there. Kiddo, I swear to you I didn't know. Sophie looked up, confused. Then why didn't you write back? Evelyn made a sound then. Not a word, just a broken little sound from the back of her throat. Noah stared at her. What letters? Nobody spoke. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside, 10 lost years stood between them breathing. Evelyn sent the remaining guard away. When the ballroom doors shut, she looked less like a billionaire and more like a woman trying not to collapse in expensive shoes. She found a box in my father's old study, Evelyn said. Photos. Your letters. My letters. A train ticket. A sonogram. Noah's legs nearly gave out. A what? Sophie stepped back, searching his face with all the terrible seriousness children have when they're testing whether adults will lie. You wrote that if it was a girl, you wanted to name her Sophie because it sounded like sunlight. Noah stopped breathing. He had written that. On the back of a movie stub in a diner at 2 a.m, while Evelyn laughed at him for picking baby names before they even had a couch. He had written that. And no one else in the world should have known. His eyes lifted to Evelyn's. She was crying now, silently. I was pregnant when my father sent you away, she said. Noah actually laughed. It came out wrong, too shattered to be anything like humor. Sent me away, he said. Evelyn, you disappeared. I waited at Union Station for 6 hours. 6. You never came. Then your father's people dragged me into some office and told me you were done with me. They gave me an envelope with $50,000 like I was some stray dog to be relocated. Sophie looked between them. Evelyn's face emptied. What? I never took it. You did? No. My father said you did. He lied. The word landed like glass. Evelyn took a step back as if the entire room had tilted. No, she whispered. He showed me a signed receipt. I never signed anything. Sophie was crying again, but quietly now. The kind of crying children do when they realize the adults they trusted are not bigger than pain after all. Evelyn put a hand to her mouth. He told me you chose money. He told me you chose power. They stared at each other across a decade built by someone else's cruelty. Then Sophie asked the question that split them both open. So, nobody left? Noah looked at the little girl. Evelyn looked too. and neither of them could answer her without admitting how much had been stolen. That was when Noah's phone started ringing. Ben. Noah glanced at the screen and panic surged through him. He was never this late. "I have to get home." Sophie grabbed him harder. "No." "I have a son," Noah blurted out. That changed everything. Evelyn blinked. "You have a child?" Noah nodded once. "My wife died 3 years ago. Ben's 8. He's home with my neighbor, and I'm already late." Evelyn looked like someone had struck her. Of all the things she might have imagined about his life, that clearly wasn't one of them. Sophie looked up. "I have a brother?" The innocence in that question nearly killed him. Noah crouched again. "I don't know what we have yet." "You have me," she whispered. It was too much. Far too much for one night, one heart, one life. Evelyn wiped her face fast, becoming composed by force. "Go home. Tomorrow I'll contact you." Noah stood. "No, not tomorrow. No disappearing, no assistance, no lawyers. If that child is mine, I'm not being managed." For a second, he thought she might fight him. Instead, she nodded. "Tomorrow morning, 9, my townhouse. I'll text the address." Noah looked at Sophie. "Okay?" She searched his eyes, needing a promise bigger than words. So he gave her the only one he could. "I won't vanish." She finally let go. But as Noah turned to leave, she ran after him and pressed something into his hand. A folded photo. He opened it in the hallway under dim gold light. It was an old Polaroid, a younger Noah, barefoot on a fire escape, grinning into sunlight with Evelyn wrapped around his shoulders. Written across the bottom in his own messy handwriting were 4 words. "Wait for me, Soph." His knees almost buckled. When he got home, Ben was asleep on the couch with his glasses crooked and an unfinished math worksheet on his chest. Noah stood there for a long time just watching him breathe. Single dads get good at surviving. You learn how to thaw cheap pasta without making it soggy, how to sew Halloween capes at 2 a.m., how to sound calm when the school nurse calls, how to cry in the shower so your kid never thinks love is exhausting. But nobody teaches you what to do when another child calls you daddy and means it with her whole soul. The next morning, every screen in the city had his face on it. Mystery man crashes heart engagement. Billionaire heiress claims stranger is her father. Con job or family secret? Ben saw one headline before Noah could flip the phone over. "Dad?" he asked softly. "Did you do something bad?" That question hurt more than the headlines. Noah knelt beside him. "No, I don't think so." Ben worried the edge of his sleeve like he did when he was scared. "Are they going to take me away?" Noah pulled him in so fast the boy squeaked. "Never." But he hated that he couldn't make the world promise the same thing back. At 9 sharp, Noah stood outside Evelyn's townhouse, less a home than a monument, with Ben beside him because there was no one else to watch him, and because Noah had already decided he would not hide his son to make rich people comfortable. The door opened before he knocked. Sophie flew out first. She stopped when she saw Ben. Ben stopped when he saw her. Children do not care about class the way adults do. They notice other things first. Fear, loneliness, whether someone looks like they've also spent nights wishing for one more story before bed. "I'm Ben," he said. "I'm Sophie," she said. Then, after one tiny pause, "I think we might both belong to him." Ben looked at Noah. That's a lot for Tuesday. Even Noah laughed. For the first time in 12 hours, the air softened. Then Evelyn appeared. Noah forgot how to breathe all over again. She wasn't dressed for cameras now. No diamonds, no armor. Just a cream sweater, tired eyes, and the fragile look of a woman who had spent the night reading old letters until the lies inside her life stopped fitting. "Come in," she said. They sat in a sunlit room that felt too beautiful for honesty. Evelyn placed a file on the table between them. "I ordered a private DNA test years ago." Noah's head jerked up. "You knew?" "I suspected," she whispered. "No, I knew in my heart. But my father controlled everything then. My accounts, my movements, my doctors. He said if I named you, he would destroy you and take Sophie from me. He told me you had already proven what you were." Noah stared at her. "And you believed him?" Her eyes filled. "I was 19, pregnant, terrified, and every person around me was paid by him." Sophie, sitting cross-legged on the rug with Ben, looked over at them. "Mom cried on my birthdays." Evelyn shut her eyes. Sophie continued, "Because children go where adults bleed. Every year after cake. She thought I didn't know." Noah looked away, jaw tight. He wanted to be angry. He was angry. But the room was thick with all the people they had been when someone richer, colder, and more powerful decided love was a liability. Evelyn pushed the file toward him. "The test confirmed it. I took it when Sophie was a baby." Noah opened it with numb fingers. "Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The world did not explode. It did something worse. It became real." Ben looked up from the rug. "So she's really my sister?" Noah couldn't speak. Sophie answered for him, smiling through tears. "I told you." For one impossible second, it almost felt beautiful. Then the front door burst open. Damien walked in like he owned the floor. Behind him came two men in suits and Victor Hart himself, silver-haired, immaculate, carrying power the way some men carry knives. Sophie's smile vanished. Ben moved closer to Noah without thinking. Victor's gaze landed on Noah as if he were something found under a shoe. "You always did turn up at inconvenient times." Noah stood. Evelyn did too. "You don't get to enter my house like this." Victor ignored her. He addressed Noah. "Tell me your number. Let's end this." Sophie shouted, "Stop trying to buy him!" Victor's expression hardened. "Take Sophie upstairs." "No!" she screamed. One of the suited men moved. Noah stepped in front of both children instantly. "Don't." Victor's eyes narrowed. "You think blood makes you brave?" "No," Noah said. "Being a father does." That one landed. Because Noah saw it then. The flash of contempt in Victor's face, not for him, but for the idea itself. Men like Victor understood inheritance, not fatherhood. Damien smiled thinly. "This is getting sentimental. Unfortunately, the law is less emotional." He slid papers across the table. A petition. Emergency protective order. Claim. Attempted extortion. Emotional manipulation of a minor. Risk to child stability. Noah felt sick. Evelyn looked stunned. "What is this?" "Necessary," Damien said smoothly. "Given the media frenzy." Victor added, "Sign it, Evelyn. Protect your daughter." Sophie backed away from all of them. "You mean protect the company?" Nobody answered. That was answer enough. Ben tugged Noah's sleeve. "Dad?" Noah looked down. Ben's face was pale, but his voice was brave in that trembling way children invent when they're watching the person they love most get hurt. "Are we in trouble?" Noah swallowed hard. "Maybe." Ben nodded once, like he was filing it away beside all the other unfair things children should never have to understand. Then came the betrayal Noah never saw coming. Evelyn picked up the pen. The room blurred. Sophie stared at her mother as if the sun itself had turned. "Mom?" Evelyn's hand shook so badly she could hardly hold the pen. Victor leaned in. "Do it." And Noah realized, too late, what kind of fear still lived inside her. Not fear for herself, for Sophie, for him, for Ben. She signed. Sophie let out a sound Noah would hear in his sleep for the rest of his life. "No!" Ben burst into tears, and Noah, who had survived poverty, grief, widowhood, and 1,000 small humiliations, felt something inside him finally tear. 2 hours later, he was in the back of a police car, arrested after Damien's lawyers claimed Noah had coerced contact with a minor for financial gain. He didn't resist. Because Ben was screaming on the sidewalk. Because Sophie was pounding on the townhouse window upstairs. Because Evelyn wasn't there. And because sometimes the cruelest thing about losing is how clean it looks from the outside. By evening, he was out on bail, thanks to an old friend from the garage. But the damage was done. Ben wouldn't let go of him that night. At 1 a.m, in the dark of their apartment, the boy whispered, "If you love somebody, why do people keep trying to separate them?" Noah stared at the ceiling. He thought about Sophie's hands on his jacket, Evelyn's face when she realized the lie, the signature on the order. His dead wife Anna, who used to say, "Pain either hollows people or deepens them." And the terrifying part was, you didn't get to choose in one moment. You chose a little every day. "I don't know," Noah admitted. Ben was quiet. Then he asked the question that broke him. "If Sophie needs you, do I still get to keep you too?" Noah turned so fast he nearly fell off the mattress. He pulled his son against him and held on like a man trying not to drown. "You never have to compete for me," he said, voice cracking wide open. "Never. Not with anyone. Not even pain." Ben cried into his shirt. So did Noah. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. Maria Alvarez stood in the hallway, small, 60-ish, and fierce-eyed, the former nanny who had helped raise Evelyn and, later, Sophie. "I'm dying," she said by way of introduction. Noah blinked. Maria brushed past him. "Not today, calm down. But soon enough that I'm no longer interested in protecting monsters." From her bag, she pulled a flash drive, a stack of letters tied in faded blue ribbon, and a photocopy of a bank ledger. "Your father-in-law that never was forged the receipt," she told Noah. "Paid a lawyer, a station clerk, and one of your old co-workers to say you took his money. Then he intercepted Evelyn's letters for years." Noah sat down hard. Maria's eyes softened when she looked at Ben. "And the fiancé, Damien? He plans to marry Evelyn, move Sophie's trust into a restructuring shell, and push Evelyn out of her own board with Victor's support." Ben whispered, "That sounds illegal." Maria snorted. "Rich people call it strategy." Noah looked at the flash drive. "Why tell me now?" Maria's expression changed, because beneath anger there was guilt. Because Sophie found the truth before we did. And children should not have to be braver than the adults who failed them. That afternoon, the city's biggest charity gala filled the Hart Foundation Hall. Damien intended to announce the wedding date. Victor intended to reassure investors. Evelyn intended, nobody knew yet, to burn her old life to the ground. Noah wasn't invited. He came anyway. Not in a suit, not pretending. He walked in wearing the same cheap dark jacket he'd been arrested in, with Ben's small hand in one of his, and Maria's flash drive in the other. People noticed. Of course they did. Shame walks slower the second time, because it has less to lose. On stage, Damien was smiling into cameras. Evelyn stood beside him, looking carved from ice. Sophie stood between them, too still, too quiet, already planning something with the terrifying calm of a hurt child who has decided she would rather shatter the room than be lied to in it again. Victor saw Noah first. His face tightened. Good. Damien followed his gaze and actually laughed. You never learn. Noah kept walking. Ben squeezed his hand. I'm here. 3 words, more courage than most men ever receive in a lifetime. Then Sophie saw him. Her whole face lit up. Not because he'd saved anything yet, just because he came back. That was the moment Evelyn made her choice. Before Damien could signal security, she stepped to the microphone and said, Before tonight continues, there is a lie that has lived too long under my name. The room froze. Damien whispered, What are you doing? She moved away from him as if his shadow burned. My father, she said, voice shaking only once, told me the man I loved abandoned me for money. He forged proof. He intercepted my letters. He manipulated my pregnancy, my child, and my life. The first gasp rose from the crowd like fire finding oxygen. Victor thundered, Evelyn! But Sophie had already run to Noah. Publicly, deliberately. And this time, nobody could mistake what they were seeing. Not performance, recognition, belonging. Noah lifted her into his arms, and she held his face with both hands, like she was making sure reality couldn't be edited again. I knew you'd come back, she whispered. I told you, he said, tears in his eyes now. I won't vanish. Damien lunged for the microphone. This is insanity. She's unstable. He's manipulating a child. Maria stepped out then, old and unafraid, and handed the flash drive to the audio-visual tech. Play it. The ballroom screens flickered. Then Victor Hart's office appeared in grainy security footage from years ago. Victor, younger but unmistakable, sliding an envelope across a desk. Victor saying, clear as a bell, he doesn't need to vanish forever, just long enough for her to believe he chose the money. The room erupted. Damien went pale. It got worse. Another clip. Damien in Victor's study 3 weeks earlier, discussing Sophie's trust and Evelyn's removal from the board after marriage. Once the girl's shares are under proxy control, Damien said on screen, the mother becomes decorative. Evelyn turned and slapped him. The sound cracked through the hall like justice itself. Security finally moved, but not toward Noah, toward Damien, toward Victor. Victor shouted about defamation, about edited footage, about family betrayal. But nobody important was listening anymore. Power had shifted. You could feel it. The board members who once hovered near him were already stepping away. That's the thing about men who rule by fear. The moment fear breaks, they look old. Sophie buried her face in Noah's neck and started sobbing. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the exhausted, shaking sobs of a child who has been carrying adult truths for too long. Noah held her tighter. Ben came to his side and slipped his arm around Sophie's back, like he'd been practicing brotherhood his whole life. And Evelyn, beautiful, broken, brave at last, walked down from the stage and stopped in front of them. She looked at Noah first. "I was wrong." He said nothing. She took another breath. "I let them tell me who you were because I was scared. And then I let fear make me cruel. I can't undo what I did. I can only tell the truth now." Noah searched her face. All the anger was still there. So was all the love he never properly buried. That was the dangerous part. Sophie looked between them through wet lashes. "Please don't do the grown-up thing where you love each other and ruin it." Even Noah laughed then, helplessly. Ben nodded. "Yeah, it's really annoying." Somewhere in the chaos, cameras kept flashing. But none of that mattered. Not the headlines coming, not the money, not the scandal. Just this. A little girl who had found her father by refusing to doubt her own heart. A boy who feared being left and still chose to share. A woman finally stepping out of inherited fear. And a man who had spent years thinking life was only about surviving long enough to make breakfast. Evelyn looked at Ben. "I owe you an apology too." Ben shrugged in that painfully adult way children do when they're trying to act fine. "You made my dad cry." "I know." That's a serious offense. For the first time that night, Evelyn smiled for real. Then Sophie took Noah's hand, grabbed Evelyn's with the other, and frowned at their distance like it was a design flaw. "No more leaving," she said. Noah looked at Evelyn. Evelyn looked at Noah. And because some promises deserve witnesses, they both answered at the same time. No more leaving. Months later, the papers would say Victor Hart resigned in disgrace. They would say Damian Cross disappeared from public life. They would say Evelyn restructured her company, set up child protection charities, and fought like hell in court to expose everything hidden behind her father's power. But that's not the part that matters most. What matters is smaller. It's Noah teaching Sophie how to flip pancakes, while she gets batter on the dog she begged for and absolutely did not need. It's Ben pretending not to love having a little sister, and then checking her backpack zipper every morning anyway. It's Evelyn sitting on the apartment floor the first time she visits the place she once would have called too small, laughing until she cries because Noah finally fixed the broken bed frame and still somehow trapped himself under it. It's the sound of all four of them in one room, messy and loud and unfinished, which is another way of saying alive. And one rainy night, months after the scandal, Sophie fell asleep on Noah's chest during a movie, lifted her head just enough to mumble. "You know what my favorite part was?" Noah whispered. "What?" "That I was right." He smiled into her hair. "About what?" She yawned, eyes already closing. "You were my daddy," she said. "You just didn't know it yet." And honestly, what do you call a miracle like that, if not love that refused to stay buried?